Hey everybody, welcome back to Linux for Everyone, and welcome home. So I recently accepted the ACEMAGIC F5A Mini PC for review here on the channel, and while it's not a brand new machine, it is new to me. So, benchmarking junkie that I am, I was eager to see how the onboard Radeon 890M graphics performed during some 1080p gaming. Now it came as a bare bones kit, so I added 32 gigabytes of RAM and two NVMe drives with a fully updated Windows 11 on one and Bazzite on the other, and got to work setting each operating system up for a fair fight. I also jumped into the BIOS and allocated 4 gigabytes of VRAM instead of the default of 2 gigabytes. And to eliminate any kind of performance variance, I recorded all the gameplay footage you're going to see with an external capture card. The latest graphics drivers were used across the board, but I didn't do anything special out of the box. No beta drivers, no kernel tweaks, no power or CPU optimizations. This is just out-of-box performance. And not only have I been impressed with the performance of this mighty little box so far, but I was downright surprised by Bazzite's consistent wins in more ways than one. Let's kick it off with Cyberpunk 2077. Something that's really important for me to note right up front is that in order to keep all of these, both benchmark results and gameplay recordings as pure as possible, I've disabled FreeSync on my monitor, and there's no VSync or variable refresh rate happening on any of these games across the board. Now, to my eyes, on this benchmark, the frame pacing isn't perfect on, it's not perfect on Bazzite or Windows 11, but once we come outside into this alleyway, it seems to me that there's a little bit more stuttering and erratic frame pacing on the left, which is Windows 11, than on the right. It's definitely still present on Bazzite, but overall, I feel like we're getting a smoother gameplay experience on Bazzite than on Windows. However, as you're going to see here in a second, Bazzite does win average FPS, but Windows actually takes the 1% low by just a couple frames per second. So with Forza Horizon 6 on the on the horizon, sorry, I couldn't help it. I wanted to revisit Forza Horizon 5 and see how it performed across Bazzite and Windows 11. And I've done this benchmark in the past across a range of hardware and graphics cards, and the Windows version of Forza Horizon 5 has always come out on top by at least a few frames per second. That, however, is not the case with this ACEMAGIC box and the Radeon 890M on Bazzite. Take a look. So as you've probably already noticed, there is some pretty egregious screen tearing happening on the left, which is Windows 11, and to a lesser extent on the right, which is Bazzite. To my eyes anyway, Bazzite looks a little bit smoother, but both have pretty obvious micro stuttering happening. What I can tell you is that there is some stuttering. There are some recorded stutters on the Bazzite side, about 12 to 15 recorded stutters, and the Windows benchmark reports 0 stutters. Now, visually, I did not see those with my naked eye, and again, like visually, it just looks like it performs better on Bazzite. And indeed, it does perform better on Bazzite. But what's interesting, and this is a theme that I feel like is becoming more and more applicable to Windows versus Linux gaming, is that the visual evidence of that performance gap is much bigger than just this 4 FPS that you see in the average FPS here. You know what I mean? So next up is Arc Raiders, and I'll be honest with you, I really struggled to get a fair gameplay comparison on this one, because every time I tried to leave the training grounds area and go into an actual live level, there was just way too much variation, and so I just kind of took a little stroll on the training grounds, fired a clip, and ended the benchmark. And unfortunately, because of the way that I've got the over the shoulder camera aligned, you can't really see my character firing on the right side at all. But Bazzite still squeaks by with the win by about 0.2 of a frame there. But Windows does get the advantage when it comes to the 1% lows. So next up is the Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered Edition. And the graphics engine here is a lot more demanding than the original, and there's a lot more graphics options to tweak. And here I did turn on FSR 3 and flipped on performance mode. And this is a fairly lengthy benchmark, so for the most part, I'm going to be quiet. But what I want to have you thinking about again is how how frame rate is just not necessarily a good indicator of the experience that you're having. So keep that in mind as you watch this. So as you can see, it's pretty awful on the Windows 11 side. It's just so erratic. The frame pacing is distracting, and there's screen tearing, and it's not super smooth on the Bazzite end, but it's pleasant. And like I said up front, I am interested in making this a fair fight. I tried to improve the Windows 11 experience by switching from multiple monitors, but I observed this same kind of degraded visual performance across the board, regardless of monitor. And even when I just viewed it directly through my capture card and OBS on the laptop that I was recording footage on. And again, this never happened on the Bazzite end. Okay, next up is Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It's a classic benchmarking run. And I discovered a while back that the native Linux version is just not very performant. And so ever since then, I've been using the Proton version of Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And historically, at least in my experience, the Windows 11 version outperforms the Proton version. And that's really not surprising when you think about it. There's always been some CPU overhead for the Proton translation layer. So, we're used to seeing about, I don't know, a 10 to 20%, 10 to 25% performance advantage on Windows. But that is not the case anymore. And I wish I had some Radeon 6000 and 7000 series dedicated GPUs to test, because it really seems like the Mesa graphics stack has been improving by leaps and bounds in the last year or so. All right, as we enter this final benchmarking scene for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I do want to point out how the Windows 11 smoothness has improved significantly on this benchmark compared to the last few that we've looked at. And so, you know, that's definitely, it's not a hardware issue for sure. I don't know if it's a driver issue, I don't know, CPU scheduling issue, but again, you know, the performance seems pretty equal across Bazzite and Windows 11 here. Maybe just slightly more micro stuttering on the Windows 11 side, but you tell me what you see. So here again, we are going to see Bazzite walk away technically with the win in terms of average frames per second, but as we've also seen, Windows 11 is going to take the victory when it comes to the 1% lows. And finally, in this suite of benchmark runs is Spider-Man Remastered. No ray tracing, no upscaling, and no frame generation here. And since the opening cutscene uses the in-game engine, it's actually a very consistent, reliable scene to benchmark. But unlike Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and more like probably Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered, another Sony first title, the stuttering here, the micro stutter is terrible. It's just terrible on the Windows side. I don't have an explanation for it. If someone out there smarter than me can explain what's happening here, I would love to hear that in the comments. To be fair, this kind of visual behavior isn't as jarring when you're actually in the heat of gameplay, but you know, when you're sitting and just studying a cutscene, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Hey, if you're still watching, you're awesome. Thank you. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and definitely subscribe if you want to see more Linux gaming content going forward. And hey, CachyOS fans or CachyOS curious, if you want to see CachyOS versus Bazzite on this very ACEMAGIC Mini PC, leave a comment. If there's enough comments, I will put in the work, with the goal of really tweaking CachyOS to see how far we can push it with things like the Mesa Git drivers, optimized kernels, etc. So if you want to see that, leave a comment, and thank you so much for watching this video. And if you've been paying attention, you'll see that with this result, Bazzite has won every single benchmark run in terms of average FPS. Holy cow. And these were not cherry-picked. These are just the games that I typically benchmark. Okay, I'm going to get out of here. Until we chat again, you all take care, and take care of each other. See ya.